Welcome back. Now, as the international push for a ceasefire intensifies, demonstrations continue in Arab and Islamic capitals. Popular pressure also intensifying on the governments from Morocco to Indonesia to do something. As the war started, the Turkish Prime Minister made a diplomatic tour of 4 countries in the region. A couple of days later, he made, in the circumstances, a shocking statement accusing Israel of breaching the ceasefire, committing a war crime, and accusing the Israeli PM, Ehud Olmert, of deception.
When the Israeli Prime Minister visited me in Ankara, I told him that Turkey is ready to help overcoming the crisis caused by the end of the ceasefire. We even offered them to mediate for the release of the Israeli soldier captured by Hamas. Olmert promised me to consult with his ministers and get back to me, but he went instead to launch an attack on Gaza. That's why I considered what happened an insult and a sign of disrespect to Turkey. Israel is the one who did not observe the truce because it did not end the blockade on Gaza, while Hamas was committed to the truce. We would have wished to see Hamas back to the negotiating table in order to extend the truce. However, Israel resorted to provocative acts through its policy of blockade, starvation and murder.
Now, with Turkey's position at the crossroads of the Middle East, Central Asia, Europe and the Caucasus, its former leading role in the Islamic world and its current pro-Western orientation can transform it into the region's pivotal diplomatic power. That's the thoughts of some. Can Ankara fill the current diplomatic vacuum, or could it lead other countries in the region to follow its lead? Still with us, our guests from Beirut, Timur Goksel, in Washington, D.C., Mounzer Sleiman, and in Dallas, Robert Jordan. Let's get to Turkey's specific role in just a moment. But Mounzer Sleiman, let me ask you first of all. The Turkish Prime Minister only a few hours ago, adding to what he'd said earlier this week and asking in Parliament what reason can justify such savagery. Now, Turkey was one of Israel's allies. It seems to be turning against it. How far does Israel have to push this to lose the support of perhaps Egypt, perhaps Jordan, and Saudi Arabia in the region, to lose the friends that it actually has?
Isn't it ironic that we are talking about the role of Turkish, who's non-Arab country, to be a counterweight for any other regional power? Now we're talking about Israel, the only effective regional power now, Iran, Israel, and Turkey. While the Arab, if they are united at least in the Palestinian issue, the Palestinian cause, the Palestinian suffering, should have provided enough reason over the years, over the decades, throughout the history, and now, especially with the current suffering, for them to come together.
Therefore, my question is, how much further does Israel have to push it to lose the friends that it has? If it hasn't lost them so far, what has it got to do?
I think it's unfortunate that the camp that aligned with the United States and Israel did lose face, let's say, and lose more political weight in the past during 2006. I think with this situation now, they are going to lose more. And I think Israel is continue its campaign of killing, and that's going to impact the internal situation in those countries, Arab countries, that they are aligning with Israel. And I think it's a total mistake to see and view what is happening in the region, whether 2006 war or the war now that been waged on the Palestinian, in the prism of the Iranian influence. There is a historical conflict. Israel is taking advantage of a situation and trying to really eliminate any chance of Palestinian state in the region.
And Timur Goksel in Beirut, in terms of Turkey's role in this, why has it gone from suddenly being Israel's friend to somebody that is vicious in its criticism of Israel? What game do you think Turkey's playing here?
Well, it's not a game. I think the Turkish Prime Minister, who really has very much personal interest in the issue, this is not really a state policy. It's been run by the Prime Minister himself on his own philosophy and his close associates who have opened up Turkey to the Middle East in the last couple of years. And they have shown so much interest in the Middle East that it's a big surprise to me. For after 30 years, Turkey is finally showing itself in the Middle East. They have been doing this for, even in Lebanon, they send soldiers to the South Lebanon. If there is a problem in Lebanon, they get involved. It's very interesting. I don't think they are trying to fill a vacuum or thing. It's just emotions there's a very big affection for the Palestinians in Turkey, not only being Islam, but I mean it's a human interest in that. But I think what we are now really seeing is, I think the Prime Minister has been terribly offended, insulted. You missed something in your, maybe you didn't hear it, in what he said today. He was very upset that he was kept waiting half an hour outside of Ramallah as a Turkish Prime Minister. Don't think they are going to take kindly to this, because Israel, from day one of this conflict, starting with Olmert's visit to Turkey, which the Prime Minister sees as a deception move, Israel totally been well, ignorant of the Turkish moves, and not really caring for it, not paying much attention to it, and on top of that, to make the Turkish Prime Minister wait outside of Ramallah.
So his vanity, to some extent, was hurt in this. Robert Jordan,
definitely.
Are we seeing egos at play here, with Tayyip Erdogan perhaps feeling insulted, with Nicolas Sarkozy, the French president, trying to push his brand of diplomacy, or are we seeing a new dawn in terms of diplomatic efforts to try to solve the crisis in the Middle East? Turkish newspapers referring to this as, you know, a golden age of Turkish diplomacy.
I think we're seeing a little bit of both, and I think the Turkish Prime Minister has to be careful here to not allow his ego to get in the way of a very constructive role that Turkey is capable of playing. I would suggest that he just get over it. And perhaps his statements of sympathy with the Palestinians is a necessary statement now, and his statement of outrage at the suffering that he's seeing. It will give him further credibility with the Arabs, who will have to be part of any peace discussion. So I think the time has come for Turkey to take a deep breath and resume a constructive role, which I think they're very capable of playing. And I think down the line we will actually see that. But
I'm wondering
in the midst
also
of all
whether,
this,
in fact,
egos do get in the way.
I'm wondering whether what we're seeing is by extension, American policy in the Middle East being channeled in different ways, perhaps through Turkey, perhaps through the French president, so as not to be tainted at the moment by that White House or State Department badge.
I think there's every likelihood that some of these statements are designed to show that they are not a puppet of Washington, but instead are independent actors seeking the best interest of the Palestinians.
Mr. Sleiman?
Sir. Yes, I think it's a grave mistake to consider what the Turkish Prime Minister is doing is because of his ego as a reaction. There is a popular movement and sympathetic movement that we saw also in the street. Hundreds of thousands of Turkish went to the street with continue like popular uprising in support of the Palestinians. So I think he, despite for historical reason, for personal reason, for religious reason, and for regional reason, of course, interest. It's not issue of personal ego. The French president may be the hyper president and paranoid and obnoxious foreign policy that sometimes it's tied up to his character or personality. But I don't want to defend Erdogan or anybody, but for instance, but this is blown out of proportion here to consider that his reaction is only personal.
Okay, Timur Goksel, I'd like to come to you for sort of to round this up. Whether it's France, whether it's Saudi Arabia, whether it be Turkey, whether it be Jordan, does it all come back to what the United States does and therefore what the new man in the White House as of January the 20th does?
Definitely. I mean, as we saw, until we have the Europeans coming, he is going, some other guy is coming. I actually think that these efforts are not really exerting so much pressure on Israel, but actually allowing Israel time to stall a conclusion of this event. What they are doing is Israel is now buying time by saying, okay, we will talk to them, we will talk to them. But all these years that I've been in the Middle East and always been involved in the conflict, at the end of the day, I know that unless Washington moves, Israel really doesn't really care. There is not too much foreign policy in Israel, although it's mostly domestic politics. If there is any foreign policy that is attached, and that foreign policy looks to Washington, the rest are not really important. They don't really care.
Timur Goksel, thank you very much indeed, former advisor to the United Nations Force in Lebanon. Appreciate your time. Mounzer Sleiman, director of the Center for Arab and American Studies out of the US capital, Washington, D.C. And Ambassador Mr. Jordan out of Dallas in Texas, former ambassador to Saudi Arabia, Robert Jordan. Appreciate the time each one of you has given to Inside Story tonight. And we also thank you for joining us here on this edition of Inside Story. Your comments and suggestions very welcome. Inside Story at aljazeera.net. From me, David Foster, and from the rest of the team, thanks for watching. Bye-bye for now.